it's Jessie G here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is episode 22. Holy moly. Yeah, last episode was 21. It was all about Lizzie Borton. I hope you guys got a lot from that. I hope you guys learned a lot from that. I'm going to go ahead and read off a disclaimer, a copyright disclaimer, and give you two warnings again, even though you saw them flash on your screen. But I'm going to go ahead and read those off again so you guys can get a chance to do whatever you want to do at your own discretion. So without further ado, let's get into it. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be interfering. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. If you are triggered or sensitive by any of these topics that are talked about in today's episode, I highly recommend you don't listen to today's episode. If you do choose to listen to today's episode at your own discretion, I highly recommend you listen to it with somebody like an emotional support system as your partner, your significant other, a best friend, a sister or brother, somebody that you trust enough to sit down with you and listen to this episode with you. Also, if you're under the age of 18, this is not an episode for minor ears. Sorry, it just isn't. I hope you guys took all of those into consideration. I hope those warnings got to you. So, without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Okay. Let's see here. Sorry. Got a lot of notes here. Jack the Ripper was a notorious, unidentified serial killer of the 1880s. He went on like a 4 or 5 month killing spree. He took 5 victims out with him. He went after 5 different prostitutes. It's not really known as to why he went after them, why he chose these particular women. I'm not really sure exactly why. There's all sorts of speculation and all sorts of reasons as to why he would go after them. Maybe something got triggered from a traumatic event that happened when he was a child, and it might have triggered some sort of rage or some sort of twisted pleasure that he had, and he went after all 5 of them. It could have been a lustful thing, a lustful kill where he just got some sort of pleasure out of it. Or he could have been rejected by one of these women or a different woman that was a prostitute, and he just couldn't handle rejection. So some sort of lustful vengeance or something might have came out of it. Who knows? That could be, those are my theories. That could have been a possible reason why he did it. Or he just could have been a very twisted, very deranged individual, probably. You never know. In the 1880s, so much would happen in the 1880s. Medical field wasn't really the best. Asylums weren't really the best either. So it was very poor maintenance on a lot of things. He was known out throughout the East End of London, England. That's where he killed his 5 victims. Some were located by a white chapel in London, England. Like I said, he took out 5 prostitutes. His first victim was Martha Tyberham. His third victim was Elizabeth Stride, and then there was Annie Chapman, Catherine Edwards, if I'm saying her name right. And then there was Mary Ann Nicholas, and then there was Mary Jane Kelly. Many movies were made about Jack the Ripper. Many books were done about Jack the Ripper. A lot of docuseries were. There was a really popular movie called From Hell that had Johnny Depp in it. One of the actresses played Mary Jane Kelly herself. She played a role in the movie. She was the last and final victim of Jack the Ripper. His first victim was on August the 7th, 1880, and his last victim, which was Mary Jane Kelly, his last victim was in November of 1880. That was his last victim, his final victim. Her crime was so brutal and so cruel and so awful and horrifying that it made its way into the movie. It made it, her murder was really known and popular because of that. And also because of her background and how she became a prostitute, how she fell into it. A little bit about that. Prostitution didn't really start becoming fully known until 2400 BC is when it started, and then it just kind of went into over the years until it finally ended or finally became illegal to be a prostitute in 1933. A lot of prostitution was known throughout the century, especially in the 1500s, 1600s, and the 1700s. It was really known. Mistresses were really known throughout that time as well. It was a really hard life for women to live. Sometimes women would fall into prostitution because of poverty. Sometimes it could have been because they were married and lost everything and had to live somehow, and they couldn't find a job because they were a woman. So that it resulted in them falling into prostitution. Sometimes it could have been because they never found somebody to marry, and their how do I put this? There's the things that make a woman were disregarded. Their I don't know really exactly how to say it, but they were just discarded, and it made it easier for them to fall into what they were falling into. It was it's really sad. It was pertinence and grace usually was dismissed. Sometimes a woman could fall for another man and might ended up pregnant, and that was the only way they could afford anything. There's so many reasons in the 1880s and even on as to why women fell into it. It ended. It finally became illegal to be a prostitute on December the 5th of 1933. It was quite a few years before World War II. If you were also in the 1880s and 1890s and 1850s, serial killers were known around those times. Some of them were women killers, some of them were men. If you were ever convicted of a murder, of a crime of taking somebody's life, and depending, no matter how severe it was, you were hanged for that murder. The last hanging of the last person didn't end till 1964. That was the last hanging. It was known throughout the years. I'm not really sure exactly when hanging started. I want to probably say around the 1900s was when it started. I want to say, because in the 1920s, there was anytime you were convicted, you were hanged. So I'm assuming probably towards the end of the 1880s into the 1890s is when it changed. Because in the 1700s, you lost your head because of whatever you did. So I'm assuming it kind of went into the 1800s a little bit, and then it must have ended sometime there, and then went into the hanging. I'm not really sure exactly, but that's my theory into it. Sometimes it was really hard for this was one of the reasons why it was really, really hard for them to figure out who Jack the Ripper was. There were so many suspects that were placed into this that they could never really pinpoint who it was. Back in the 1880s, crime was so hard to find the person that not only did it, but if you did find a person, it was sometimes hard for them to place the serial killer or the person that committed the crime at the crime scene. It was sometimes hard to find a credible witness that saw what happened, but Jack the Ripper's murders were so bad that nobody saw it. It happened at night, and you just couldn't really see anything, and it happened in dark alleys too. So what made it so. That's what made him so notorious for what he did, because nobody could see it when it happened. And that was the whole strange thing about his case. He also wrote a series of letters to Scotland Yard. Um, you can find some of his letters by researching it. You can find them in books that you can find off of Amazon about him. Um, some of his letters would start off "Dear Boss," and then it would just kind of go into some sinister stuff about his killings, or about what he did, or about how he was laughing at the police for trying to figure out who he was. He would just have a good laugh at it. Um, some of the names of his victims that fell prey to him um, I think I probably mentioned them. Um, he killed 5 different prostitutes. No reason, like I said, there was no reason as to why he chose these specific women. Nobody really knows. Sorry for that drop. um, his killings did not stop until November of 1880, when he killed Mary Jane. That's when his last killing stopped, and that's when speculation as to what happened to him. Some people think that he died. Some people think that he might have went to the U.S. or he might have went somewhere else. Um, some people might have thought that he just dropped off the face of the earth or something. Nobody really knows as to what happened to him. Um, he was a very strange, very deranged, very brutal, very disturbed person. Um, Scotland Yard were totally mind boggled by this person. It was so scary. It was scary to be a prostitute. It was scary to be a woman, period, at that time, because Scotland Yard couldn't stop the murder. They couldn't keep it from happening, and they didn't know who it was. So it was a very scary time in the 1880s. Uh, there was a lot of notorious other serial killers. Some of them were nurse serial killers. Some of them were regular, ordinary ones. Some of the ones that I found, some of them were from the U.S. Some of them were from London themselves. And there was one serial killer that I think she was probably from uh, the U.S. herself. It was Jane Topin. She was born March 1854, and she died August the 17th, 1938. But she wasn't caught by the police until 1901. She confessed to 31 murders, but only 12 of the 31 murders were actually confirmed. That just goes to show how hard it was, even in the 1880s and even in the 1900s, how hard it was. Um, it kind of has evolved over the years of finding serial killers. Even still to this day, they still, honestly, Scotland Yard still to this day doesn't know for sure who it was. They have their speculations as to who it was, but they can never really truly confirm as to who it was. Um, so that what else makes this case so popular is the fact that he got away with killing these 5 women, and Scotland Yard still doesn't know who did it. Um, there's a lot of private investigators who've looked into Jack the Ripper's case. There's also normal investigators from Scotland Yard who've looked into his case. There's historians that looked into his case. There's a lot of people who've looked into his case and still came out with not knowing who it was, you know. They've dived deeper into who Jack the Ripper was, who the suspects were, you know, some of the evidence, some of the photos that were found at this, that were taken from the scene, some of the things that were still around that were left at the scene, his letters, that type of thing. So it was very strange. Some of his letters were so strange that they ended up being on postcards sometimes. And some of his letters would have what I probably would have seen blood on them. It was so bad because he would write them possibly after what happened. After he committed the crime, it was so bad. He also took a lot. He also would take something from his victims. That's what also made it so twisted and so disturbing at the same time. So yeah, there were so many speculations as to why he did it. Like I was saying in there, I think he either had something traumatic happen to him in his childhood, or he did it out of a lustful killing. He got some sort of pleasure out of doing it. Sometimes, or it could have been, or even sometimes, or it possibly could have been he might have been rejected by a prostitute. He might have been rejected by one of these prostitutes. He might have known one of them and was rejected by one of them, and he just kind of went on his vengeance. Or he, like I said, he must have just not liked him because maybe his mother fell into it. Who knows? You know, nobody really knows as to why he did it. But you can look up and find some of his letters, and the thing that stood out was a lot of the letters he would address. Some of the letters he would address, Dear Boss. So it was really strange. And then he would just, like I said, he would just go into some sinister thing. So, you know, it was pretty weird, to say the least. Jack the Ripper's case was very interesting and very brutal, and it was definitely like a horror film. What made Mary Jane's murder so popular, it wasn't so much, like I was saying, it wasn't so much because of how brutal her death was. It happened in her sleep. That's how brutal it was. That was how sinister it was, because she was asleep when it happened. And just the way it happened was just brutal and very disgusting and disturbing. You can see some of the photos, even in the book, of some of the crime scenes. So it was pretty twisted, to say the least. But anyways, I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I hope that you learned a lot about what it was like to what it was like for Scotland Yard to deal with crime scenes, you know, and for what it was like for London, England around that time to deal with and process things. And just learned a little bit about that history as well as Jack the Ripper's case itself. So I hope you guys took a lot out of that. Sorry it was a short one, but that's how it was. The next case that I will be doing is the Elizabeth Bossery case. She was a serial killer of the 1570s. She was a very, very deranged, very twisted individual. She does have descendants that are still alive. There's been a lot of docuseries about her descendants and about the places and about the castle that she lived in that still stands, but it's just a bunch of ruins now. So it'll be a very interesting case to do and very interesting case to talk about. But I hope you guys took a lot out of this. Also, sorry for this being so late. I was supposed to go up Friday, but you guys will be seeing this Sunday. Much apologies for that. But I hope you guys will get a lot out of it anyways. Look forward to the next episode. I hope you guys have an awesome day or night or afternoon wherever you're watching this from. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Hit that red subscribe button and that notification bell. And also, don't forget to go check me out on all of my social medias. They're listed in the description box below this video. Go check me out. Also, check out my old second channel. It's Jessie's Reviews and Podcasts. There's episodes 1 through 8 on there. You can go check those out. And again, I hope you guys have an awesome day or night wherever you're watching this from. And I'll catch you guys in my next episode. Laters.